A man has shared his experience of discovering his wife's infidelity. The man's wife had been unfaithful to him with multiple men, including one of his friends. The man's actions in response to this discovery are outlined in the following account, which includes 4 updates. I have recently encountered this forum, and am seeking support. I would be grateful if you could provide some background information. I am a 30-year-old male, and my wife is a 25-year-old female. We have been married for 3 years, and have been together for nearly 6 years. We do not have any children. We have no children and no real assets. Our debts exceed our cash holdings. We rent a house and my wife is the primary breadwinner, earning approximately $1.5K per month. I work extremely hard to provide her with the lifestyle to which she has become accustomed. However, I am now facing an unthinkable situation. My work colleagues are very close-knit, and a colleague of nearly 3 years has invited me to join a recreational soccer league, which I have played in for 2 years. My wife would attend every soccer game I played in, which I initially perceived as a gesture of support. However, I was aware that she was also consuming alcohol, which was often present at these events. I would consume alcohol to a limited extent, but she would become quite intoxicated during the games and frequently accompanied me home afterwards. Some of the other players and I would socialize at various locations after the games. On a number of occasions, we returned to my place or went to a bar or pizza joint. A couple of weeks ago, a group of them were going to get together at one of the guys' houses, which was a city away from me. I informed them after the game that I was sorry and that we wouldn't be going. I had work the next morning. On the ride home, she texted one of the guys I considered to be a friend, asking him to give her a ride over. Upon my return home, she inquired as to whether it would be permissible for her to attend the gathering while I was driving. I informed her that I had worked the following morning and that I wished to be with her that evening. She responded with an angry, silent treatment, and upon arriving at our residence, I observed a vehicle parked in front of the house. It was my acquaintance, who had made the decision to attend the gathering without consulting me. I was displeased with this decision and approached my acquaintance's vehicle to express my displeasure. I then instructed her to leave, but my wife got out of my car and into his. They drove away in my rage. I plugged in the iPad that I had bought for her some years earlier, which was no longer operational. However, I was aware that it was connected to her messaging and social media accounts. I saw exactly where she was, and attempted to remain awake until I finally fell asleep that night at approximately 3 a.m. When I woke the next morning, she was still not home. Upon returning home, I arose, prepared for work, and departed that morning without waking her or kissing her goodbye, a first and only occurrence. I desired for her to be aware of my displeasure, and I did so well before my departure for work. I seized the iPad and placed it within my briefcase. Upon reaching my place of employment, I proceeded to attend a meeting and make several phone calls. After these activities, I retrieved the iPad and observed it illuminate with a notification from a messaging application. The notification indicated that a message had been received from a contact named Buddy. I opened the application and viewed a distressing exchange. The messages were supposed to self-destruct, but this version of the app must have been outdated, as I was able to witness their conversation in real time. In it, my wife's friend made references to them having sex and engaging in sexual activities with other men the previous night. I was close to losing control of my emotions, but the situation deteriorated further. My wife instructed her friend to send her a video of him urinating, which he did. I was forced to witness this. I left my office and went to the bathroom, where I vomited profusely. I was shaking from what I had just witnessed, and I was granted permission to leave work for the day. I was afraid I would hurt someone or myself. I drove home and found my wife still asleep on the bed. I put my things down and asked her to come downstairs. I sat across from her and asked her to tell me in detail everything that happened the previous night. She did, but she omitted any sort of sensual situations. I proceeded to the bathroom and vomited profusely. I was visibly shaken and requested permission to leave work for the day, which was granted after I took several hours to calm down. I was genuinely concerned about the potential for causing harm to others or myself. Upon returning home, I found my wife still asleep in bed. I placed my belongings down and requested that she come downstairs. I sat across from her and asked her to provide a detailed account of what had transpired the previous night. She did so, but omitted any references to sensual activities, such as drinking, playing games, or engaging in sexual intercourse. I inquired as to whether she had engaged in any further sexual activity with Buddy that morning. She replied that she had sent him several messages, but that there had been no significant developments. I then revealed that I had observed the entirety of their conversation. She became visibly distressed and immediately inquired as to whether I was planning to leave her. She eventually admitted that she had engaged in sexual intercourse with Buddy and another teammate. During the course of the conversation, the subject revealed that the events in question had occurred the previous night. She stated that, while there may have been other instances, she could not recall with certainty the particulars of these other encounters. I inquired as to whether this was her first experience with such an event. She informed me that it was not. In fact, she disclosed that there had been one occasion when she engaged in sexual activity with another individual while I was asleep in my own bed. I assisted her in packing a bag, and she subsequently departed the residence to stay with her family. She implored me not to divulge any information regarding these events to anyone. I was left alone. In my account of this traumatic experience, I am now 2 weeks out from the event in question, and I find myself in a state of uncertainty regarding the most appropriate course of action. I sincerely hope that my experience will not be regarded as the most distressing instance of a spouse discovering their partner's infidelity. However, it is challenging to envisage a scenario that is more harrowing than discovering your wife engaged in a group sexual encounter with individuals you have welcomed into your life, only to discover that this has been occurring for several months with at least one of the participants. In response to this revelation, my wife has attributed the entire incident to the influence of alcohol and has asserted that she has expressed a desire to commence an alcohol dependency program and to engage in couples therapy. She has indicated that she wishes for the couple to emerge from this situation together. In my view, this is a somewhat belated aspiration, but I am prepared to accept the consequences of my actions. I experience a full range of PTSD emotions, including guilt. I am unsure of the rationale behind the meeting with the attorney scheduled for tomorrow. I believe I am taking the appropriate course of action, regardless of her struggles with alcohol dependency and her desire to resolve the issue. I am unable to communicate with her. I am unable to trust her, and I am disgusted by her actions. I deserve a partner who is more reliable than she is, and I am not perfect. However, I feel guilty about the situation, and I am unsure of how to proceed. I am not the bad guy, but I am unsure of how to reconcile this. I would appreciate any words of wisdom or support. It is challenging to cease caring about the individual who has caused one to be completely and fully blindsided. I appreciate your patience and understanding as I process this experience. It has been approximately 1 month since I shared my experience, and I have received numerous messages from individuals who have expressed concern and offered support. Unfortunately, the situation has evolved from a traumatic experience to one that is deeply disturbing. The initial shock and distress have been compounded by the realization that the situation has become even more complex and challenging. I must preface this update with an apology for its length. I am aware that it will be lengthy, but it is the only way to convey the full extent of my devastation. Days after the initial post, I took your advice and made several appointments with attorneys and a legal document preparation specialist to maintain my options. My wife was unaware of these meetings. I should note that we did not contact each other directly for several days after the initial post. My wife was adamant that this time she would make an effort to get us two in to see a marriage therapist, which I had been insisting upon for months before my D-Day. I had been hoping that we could try to see if there was any way of working through this, but I knew in my heart what my choice would inevitably be. She did succeed in getting us onto a therapist's schedule, but it was going to be about a week and a half until we could get in. During the time, I was monitoring her activities with great interest, particularly on her iPad. I was monitoring her messages, checking her Facebook and Snapchat accounts, and so on. After a week and a half of monitoring her digital activities, I had no further evidence. I thought perhaps she was showing true remorse when it finally came time to see the therapist. He sat us down and asked us why we were there. I told her to tell him the story in her own words. She left out some details. The therapist then turned his head to me and asked me how I felt about my trust in her and my marriage. I was unable to answer, so instead, I replied that I was unable to say how I felt about the situation until I had time to process it. I then proceeded to tell him that I felt the marriage was over. The vows were broken, my trust was shattered, and I believe that the only remaining option is to obtain a divorce. My gut was wrenched, and she became hysterical. I continued, stating that I am unsure of how to salvage the relationship, but that the marriage is over. I meant what I said on the altar, and I am not being true to myself if I do not recognize that the marriage is broken and cannot be fixed. At that point, I felt a slight sense of relief. Having stated my intention to end the marriage in front of my therapist and a third party, the remainder of the appointment was spent on explaining my rationale to my wife. I attempted to reassure her and calm her down, and I believe that the session was a success. My therapist insisted on seeing us separately in order to determine whether he could help us as individuals before attempting to reconcile us as a couple. I wish to make it clear at this point that I have no intention of ever considering reconciliation. However, I believe that the individual therapy might be beneficial for me in the meantime. I was aware that embarking on a legal journey could be financially devastating to me, given that I am the breadwinner in a no-fault state. I have written out the legal process in detail. However, given the current circumstances, it is not advisable to post this information online. The overarching point of the legal process is that I must maintain amicability at this time. Approximately 1 week and a half later, both parties have undergone at least one individual therapy session. The narrative presented to her family is that the marriage is being terminated due to the breach of vows. However, both parties are attempting to heal themselves. She is still residing with her family, and I continue to monitor her digital activities for any indication that she may be engaging in the same behaviors that had previously been the subject of concern. Many of you had suggested that she would not admit to such actions, and I would add that it is not my intention to ascribe blame. However, I would like to share that it was only recently, following an unplanned visit to the App Store, that I discovered a previously unchecked source of information. Upon accessing the app download history on her iCloud account, I found that almost 2 weeks prior to that evening, she had downloaded the discovery of a secret texting app on her phone prompted a visceral reaction. It became immediately apparent that, throughout her absence, she had deliberately concealed some form of communication from me, despite my possession of her iPad, which she had requested I retain. This revelation underscored the necessity of rebuilding trust. However, it appeared that she was unaware that an app downloaded on one iCloud device could be accessed via the history of any other iCloud-connected device. Obtaining this information was crucial to understanding the nature of her communications. I was unable to ascertain whether the communications were within that app. I was not even in control of my body. When I reflected on those moments, I downloaded the app onto her iPad and attempted a few of her most common login combinations. This revealed that she had been messaging her partner on this app since after our first therapy appointment together. Furthermore, they had been engaging in sexual activity with one another during periods when she was aware that I would be absent from the area. I experienced a strong emotional reaction, which I describe as a feeling of nausea and distress. It was 3 in the morning on a weekday. On that night, I proceeded to the restroom and began gathering all the available prescription-strength medications. I then returned to my room with an abundance of assorted pills, which I believed would undoubtedly prove effective in ending my life. I sat on the edge of my bed, overcome with emotion, contemplating ending my life. I then retrieved my phone and attempted to contact my mother, but there was no answer. My father and sister also answered, but I was too distraught to communicate effectively. She was able to discern that I was on the verge of losing control of my emotions. She was unaware that I was in possession of the pills, but she did insist on keeping me on the phone, albeit in the middle of the night, until I had regained my composure. It took approximately an hour, but I was finally able to achieve a state of numbness once more. After hanging up the phone, I proceeded to return to the bathroom and poured the pills back into one of the bottles. I then washed my hands and returned to bed with the intention of attempting to obtain at least a couple of hours of sleep. The hours passed, and I came to realize that I needed to go to work. I was unable to remain in the house or in that moment any longer. As I got dressed, I threw the bottle of pills into my briefcase along with the iPad. Upon arrival at my office, I promptly gave both items to my most trusted coworker and asked him to lock them up in his desk and not return them to me, no matter what. He obliged and gave me an understanding pat on the shoulder. I proceeded to leave the premises, thereby fulfilling my objective of obtaining irrefutable evidence of my wife's infidelity and untruthfulness. I had been struggling for days to determine the most appropriate course of action regarding the information I had uncovered. On the one hand, I was driven to share the details with every individual in my wife's life, including family members, friends, and acquaintances. I was compelled to reveal her true nature and the extent of her actions. I was continuing to pursue this course of action, but I was unable to do so. I had already initiated the process of ending the marriage, but there was still a window of opportunity for her to engage in further deceitful and costly behavior. As days passed, and I received no response to my communications, I became increasingly distressed. She finally went out of her way to visit me, but I was so upset that I was unable to respond in a calm and rational manner. I was deliberately vague and seemed indifferent to her. I was unsure of how to proceed. It was not until she lost her temper and started yelling at me for acting weird that I gave her a chance and asked her point blank if she had had any contact with Buddy whatsoever since that night. Her response was a definitive no. I then asked her again if she was sure about that, and she adamantly proclaimed that she hadn't, and that he was gross, and that she would never do that to me. She then stated that she could never do that to me. I then dropped the bomb, informing her that I had discovered an app and a video that she had not been aware of. I then proceeded to show her a video I had taken on my mobile phone of the conversations that had been taking place between the two of them throughout the duration of the proceedings. This included images that had been sent to one another, as well as plans that had been made to engage in clandestine activities based on my daily schedule. Upon viewing this, she collapsed onto the ground in a state of distress, crying and begging me for an explanation. I maintained a neutral tone throughout, and informed her that I would not be disclosing any information to anyone else, in exchange for her promise to refrain from any further conflict. With regard to the divorce process, I will endeavor to be impartial, despite the fact that I am not obliged to do so. You will be served with the divorce papers, and then you will be expected to take no further action with them. Otherwise, people will have to be informed about this situation and the reasons behind my apparent unreasonable behavior. Your choice. She left, and 2 days later, she was served. Since that day, I have kept my word and have not told anyone outside of my immediate family members. However, I am aware that I have been monitoring her movements since the divorce proceedings began. She has been visiting him every night since then at the house where he lives with his mother. Her family believes she is attending Alcoholics Anonymous meetings every night, but my screenshots of her location during the meetings prove otherwise. I am perplexed as to why she has not changed her iCloud password. I continue to compile evidence because I am compelled to do so. I am currently experiencing anxiety about the period of time that must pass until her right to challenge me in court expires. Despite the fact that she has been aware of her family's concerns for some time, she has chosen to continue her relationship with the man in question. This is despite the fact that she is aware that her actions are causing distress to her family. The situation is further complicated by the fact that she is able to present a false image to her family, who believe that she is on the right path. In reality, however, she is deceiving them. The most distressing aspect of this situation is the apparent lack of accountability on her part. Despite her actions, she is able to continue living a seemingly normal life, spending time with her family during the day and then returning to her partner at night. While I go to work each day, head home to an empty, mentally haunting house, and experience how it truly feels to be alone in every sense of the word, I am past the feelings of ever considering self-harm. Nevertheless, these are dark days. I am taking everything hour by hour, day by day, until the day comes that I have the reassurance of knowing I will make it out of this hell without my finances being destroyed and officially able to completely leave her in the dust. I am unsure of my next steps. I am merely attempting to survive until that moment arrives. I am grateful for your reading and for your concern, advice, and courage. This is my third post here and, hopefully, my last. I have received incredible amounts of support. I received advice from this forum that proved invaluable during the darkest days of my life. I have waited until now to contribute again, because my divorce is now official. I no longer have to hide my feelings after waiting the absurdly long 6 months and 1 day cooling off period to see if my ex-wife lawyered up without my knowledge. I have gone completely no contact, and I feel like I am finally able to start progressing forward. Following the initial 2 posts made by me shortly after the divorce was finalized, many individuals expressed their opinions as to the perceived insanity and grotesqueness of my actions. I should have been aware that the remainder of the cooling-off period would be similarly chaotic. Therefore, I have decided to share an update regarding the events that have transpired since my last post. The last post I shared was 6 weeks after the divorce was finalized. I did not mention in that post that I had already filed my divorce papers with the county. I initiated the divorce process, following the advice of numerous kind Redditors, who suggested that I return the iPad and terminate any accounts that might enable me to obsess over her activities. I was aware of the potential consequences of my actions, but I was determined to take control of the situation. While my approach to the divorce process may have had an emotional impact in the long run, it did not significantly impact my financial situation. In the moment, it seemed to be the most logical course of action. This process occurred at a painfully slow pace after I came to the realization that I could no longer trust this woman in my life. I knew that I had to end the relationship, but I was unwilling to continue paying her a monthly sum of approximately $2,000 in spousal support for the remainder of our marriage. Furthermore, we did not have children together, which would have made this a difficult situation from a legal standpoint. The state of fault divorce and my status as the breadwinner meant that I was unable to provide financial support to my former spouse. I was therefore forced to consider alternative strategies to ensure my own financial security and to facilitate my departure from the marriage. After careful reflection, I devised a plan to achieve these objectives. Looking back, I recognize that the tactics I employed to navigate my divorce may have been unethical. However, I believe that the outcome was ultimately beneficial. I do, however, feel that my integrity or moral high ground may have been compromised as a result of my actions. This is a matter of opinion. From my perspective, my actions were relatively minor in comparison to the significant distress and anguish she caused me at the same time as my previous post. I had already prepared and submitted the divorce papers to the county, but was awaiting confirmation. I kept this information from my wife, who was still living with her family. She was never permitted to stay in my home, ever since I first made her leave. I had arranged several meetings with her to discuss the situation. I attempted to persuade her that I still wished to attempt to salvage the relationship, although I was aware that our marriage was irretrievably broken. In our discussions, I made it clear that I believed our vows had been broken and that, if we wished to start again, we would need to start anew. I proposed that we should mutually end the marriage, and then begin dating one another again. Upon reflection, it is still difficult to comprehend how she could have been persuaded to accept this course of action. In fact, I was prepared to go to great lengths to make the process as straightforward and painless as possible for her. I was eager to expedite the proceedings and keep them out of the public eye, with the intention of allowing us to focus on the next stage of our lives together. A prime example of this was how I had her served. We had a mutual friend come over to my house, the house we had lived in together, to play the role of a third wheel in the signature exchange and subsequent conversation proceeded without any significant delay. She proceeded to sign the requisite documents, which were subsequently sealed within the envelope in which they had been delivered. It is unlikely that she ever fully examined the minutiae of the legal forms, as I had prepared a detailed and compelling narrative that omitted any mention of spousal support. The account balance at the time was split equally between the two parties. This was the single largest issue that I wished to avoid, as I was keen to avoid the necessity of paying her spousal support over the initial few months. I attempted to ride out this period of adjustment. The desire to have time to reflect on the situation was strong, yet it was challenging to avoid seeing her. I met with her approximately twice a month for dinner or to engage in small talk in a public setting. These meetings were always held in a public place, ensuring that she could not accuse me of attempting to harm her. I maintained an outward appearance of stability and composure, portraying a sense of emotional stability and resolution. Seeking the capacity to forgive so that we could reconcile, I was able to cleanly remove her from my bank accounts with her actual assistance in doing so. I also had her removed from the lease and got all of her possessions moved out of our house into a storage unit. After all of this was done, I convinced her that we would get a new place together. Having her stuff out of the house would make the house feel a lot less haunting. The process of lying to her and maintaining her state of submission and cooperation made the difficult separation tasks seem relatively straightforward. She believed that she was doing the right thing for us. This strategy enabled me to get through approximately 4 of the 6 months that I needed to endure until I reached the point of light at the end of the tunnel. It was not until sometime in early month 4 that I received a text message from a family member of hers, who was living with her at the time, asking if this family member was aware of the truth regarding Buddy, yet to maintain the pretense of reconciliation. I replied with an affirmative reply to the question of whether I knew why. In return, I received a photograph of my wife and Buddy dining together at a restaurant in a different city. This was followed by a text message stating that the incident was taking place at that very moment. It was at this point that I made a critical error in judgment, allowing my emotions to cloud my thinking. I sent my wife a text message at that moment, requesting a telephone conversation. She replied that she was currently attending an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting and would be able to call me as soon as she had concluded the meeting. I then informed her that I was unaware that such meetings were held and that Buddy had become her sponsor. This information caused her to become extremely agitated, and she immediately called me, shouting at me and accusing me of stalking her. I replied in a strongly worded manner, which she found offensive. I informed her that I would not allow this on this sub, and proceeded to call her some names. I also informed her that I had absolutely no interest in speaking with her ever again. The last 2 months of the divorce resulted in her being in a relationship with Buddy, which was initially private but eventually became public knowledge. I had blocked both of them on all social media, but information about them trickled in through various friends of ours. This prompted questions, and more people started contacting me, wanting to know what was going on. Apparently, my wife was getting involved with Buddy. My wife became more assertive in posting status updates and pictures of the two together. If someone reached out to me and asked, I would tell them as much as they wanted to know about the friendships and relationships I truly valued and wanted to salvage. I had to get on my side. It did not take more than telling them the truth to do the trick. However, having the support behind me and to hear people who knew us both acknowledge that what she did to me was horrific was more important than anything else. The material division in the divorce itself provided an opportunity for me to vent to others. Almost everyone I spoke with about what happened had communicated with her first in some way or another to find out who this guy was that she was posting pictures of. Each of those follow-up calls to me revealed that she had drastically downplayed the events that had occurred. However, to the best of my knowledge, she did not deny that she was the one who cheated. I was obliged to inform them of the details she had chosen to leave out. All of our friends and most of her closest relatives were in shock. I believe that they chose to support me and that they continue to do so. I found myself asking them not to rock the boat until the divorce was finalized. The more time that went by, the bolder the pictures became. The more public their relationship became, the more my phone rang. It came to the point that I had to ask people to please stop informing me of their developments because it was still causing me real emotional pain. Valentine's Day happened to be just a few days before the finalization of the divorce. Along with the day of love came 3 screenshots from 3 different people. All of the same social media post, the 2 pigs embrace, along with a romantic description to go along with the picture about how amazing God is to deliver such a wonderful man into her life, and that she couldn't be happier. I was asked to cease receiving updates on the couple's relationship, as they were causing me significant distress. Valentine's Day fell just a few days before the divorce was finalized, and with it came 3 screenshots from 3 different individuals. The images showed the couple embracing, accompanied by a romantic description of how God had delivered a wonderful man into her life. Furthermore, she expressed her hope that he would become her husband at some point in the future. The saying, "When a door shuts, God opens a window," was particularly amusing. Some extended family members and distant friends expressed confusion and shock at the news, and some even used emojis to convey their feelings. While I do not take issue with the couple's relationship, I do feel a sense of loss. However, I also feel a deep sense of disgust and regret. This woman is grotesque, cold-hearted, and I feel a sickness within me for not recognizing her as a monster for so many years. Furthermore, I have no respect or energy to comment on or worry about her partner, who is also despicable. He is sure to get hit by the karma train for sticking around with her, my ex-wife, someone I truly feel like I do not know anymore. The approaching dissolution of our marriage was, at least initially, relatively straightforward. However, the day finally came last week when the court-ordered date for the dissolution of our marriage arrived. I had not been served any papers, and her opportunity to challenge the dissolution had already passed. We had reached an agreement regarding the division of our assets and liabilities, and I was able to retain my entire 401k, avoid spousal support, and assume responsibility for no additional debt. I also avoided engaging with her in any legal or court-related matters. Once again, at the conclusion of the day, I blocked her number from my cellular device. The following day, 7 of my closest acquaintances, 6 of whom were friends of ours, threw me a divorce celebration, which they documented on the social media platform Snapchat throughout the night. It was a noteworthy event that warranted documentation and earned me the decision to block all social media contact with my former spouse and a few unkind messages to some of them. Notably, her maid of honor was present at my divorce celebration and has since expressed a desire to terminate all future contact. P.S. I am currently experiencing one final internal struggle. I would be grateful if someone could offer some insight. During the period of intense preoccupation with my ex-wife's digital footprints, I discovered that she had been engaging in an affair with a man from her hometown. This man is an old flame of hers, but he has a wife and a child. I am struggling with the question of whether I should attempt to establish contact with this man and, if so, how I should proceed. My wife is aware of my feelings of shame. However, I have not yet been able to rationalize the idea of destroying a family and having that on my conscience. I am unsure whether I should tell her, identify myself, or keep this information to myself. This situation is a persistent source of distress, causing me nausea, anxiety, and occasional nightmares. I would appreciate any advice on how to proceed. All things considered, I will provide an update in 17 days. In a fortnight, it will be the 2nd anniversary of my D-Day. Upon reflection, I can state with some confidence that I never anticipated that I would survive this long, given the passage of time and the healing of the pain, burden, hurt, and depression that I experienced as a result of my ex-wife's actions. I have received messages from numerous individuals expressing interest in receiving an update on my situation. In response, I would caution that one should be careful what one asks for. It is my hope that this will be my final update regarding the events that have transpired since the divorce became official. For those who are joining the conversation at this point, I would like to provide a brief overview of the situation. For those who enjoy being stunned, flabbergasted, appalled, or left saying, "Unbelievable," I would recommend reading the posts below. It has been quite some time since my last update, but there have been some important events that truly demonstrate the appalling nature of this situation. After the divorce was finalized in February 2019, I attempted to maintain no contact with my former spouse. However, this proved to be more challenging than anticipated. I did not engage in direct communication with her, but I did observe instances where a distant family member or a friend mentioned something they had seen on a mutual acquaintance's Snapchat. My true friends were supportive in their efforts to maintain privacy. It was not possible to withhold such information indefinitely. The first blockbuster occurred in May 2019, when one of my closest friends informed me that my former spouse was to be remarried to a gentleman from Tennessee. My friend's husband had not yet blocked my former spouse on Facebook, and was able to take screenshots of the events that transpired leading up to the big news. The events in question took place between March 2019 and July 2019. It would appear that the couple in question did not remain together for long after the divorce was finalized. I am not aware of the specifics of this dissolution of the marriage or the circumstances surrounding it. I would have liked to know more, but I am not surprised that I do not. In April, a series of status updates on Facebook indicated that everything that was happening was for a reason, and that she was falling in love with someone. This was followed by a sudden cessation of activity. In July, a simple picture and caption were posted on her wall. The picture showed her and an unknown man, who was not acquainted with her or aware of her previous relationship. They were standing in a courthouse, holding hands and wearing rings on their fingers. The image was geotagged in California and showed her new last name. The caption read, "Excited to start the rest of my life with such an amazing man. Feeling so blessed. Look out, Tennessee. Here we come." I am aware that this account, which begins with my initial post, may appear implausible. However, I can offer no other evidence than to state that I am writing the truth. Some readers may find these next few lines difficult to accept, but I hope that those who have read this far have some trust in me. I felt compelled to issue a warning before going on. I simply could not stand the intense curiosity of the situation. I reached out to one of my former wives. I contacted my cousin-in-law, with whom I had a cordial relationship, to obtain further details. He informed me that the couple had met online and had been in communication for several months. It appeared that they had developed a strong emotional attachment to one another. The groom proposed to the bride on a telephone call, and she accepted. They were eager to proceed with the wedding, but the bride's family was not informed or invited to the ceremony. The wedding took place in a town that was somewhat incongruous, situated approximately 2 hours away from the couple's hometown. The marriage ceremony itself was conducted on a Saturday, which also marked the first occasion on which the couple had met in person. Despite this, they proceeded to become husband and wife. According to the cousin, the lack of attendance at the courthouse wedding by any member of the bride's family was noteworthy. This could have been due to a lack of time to plan or a lack of respect for the event. The marriage was conducted in an informal manner, which would have been distressing for her. On Sunday, she packed a moving truck with her belongings and departed for Tennessee on Monday. I was astonished. I had heard the story from numerous sources and was convinced of its veracity. However, at the time, I found it difficult to believe. It is likely that, had he been aware of the circumstances, he would have taken action to prevent the marriage. He could have married her in California, a no-fault state where he could have fallen into the same situation I was facing with her. However, he was probably simply not informed, rather than being that stupid. I did my best to shake the idea of both of them from my mind, but I did find solace in knowing that they were moving far away, where I knew I would not have any chance of randomly running into her ever again. Summer came and went in 20. In the autumn of the year, another bombshell was dropped. While thumbing through Instagram, a video emerged on my screen of my ex-wife holding a plate in front of her father. He covered his eyes with his hands before I was able to realize what it was that I was looking at. I saw that on the plate was a single cookie, covered with blue frosting. My ex-wife's voice came through, counting down from 3 to 1. It was a boy. As her father, upon uncovering his eyes, it became evident that the video was a gender reveal. This prompted the question of why I was seeing this. It appeared that my mother-in-law had recently created an Instagram account and posted the video, which depicted her husband's excitement. It seemed that Instagram's algorithm had identified me as someone who might be interested in viewing this video. This was a particularly challenging period, marked by sleepless nights and a sense of distress. The second emotion I experienced was a complex blend of feelings, including disgust, pain, frustration, and even a hint of jealousy. It was a sentiment that I had long aspired to experience. In life, I had aspired to become a father. Had our previous timeline not been disrupted, this very well could have been the time that we had a child together. It could have been my child. I could have been the one becoming a father. I am now 32 years old. I thought I would be a father by now. I had not even begun to consider a relationship, let alone a child. I am a mature man. I realize that I do have time ahead of me to achieve that dream. With a partner I love and am happy with, I am aware that I am not where I thought I would be by now. I can only say with certainty that in this particular scenario, I would prefer to be in my position than that of the fathers to be I imagine. I have been fortunate to have the support of those around me, and I am aware that I have not hurt either way. I am aware that this is the preferable position. I am grateful to be in this position, rather than facing the alternative. However, I cannot help but wonder, from time to time, whether the situation might improve. I am pleased to report that, as time passes, I find myself thinking less and less about her and her circumstances. This is a positive step forward. However, I still experience bad days, which are made worse by the stay-at-home orders. These days are unbearably depressing. I am fortunate to be currently working as an independent contractor, which allows me to work from home on my computer. However, I miss the company of others and the gym. I have been visiting my parents as much as possible to have some company that is not on a webinar or over the phone. I am aware that this situation affects us all in similar ways. It is not something I am going through alone. I am employed as a contractor and am able to work from home on my computer. However, these are very lonely days. I make a point to get out and walk, but I do miss the gym. I have gone home to visit my parents as much as I can, just to have some company that is not talking to someone on a webinar or over the phone. I am aware that this situation that we all find ourselves in is a shared experience in its effects on all of our lives. It is not something that I am going through alone when I feel overwhelmed. I reflect on the early days following my D-Day, when I believed I would never recover. However, I have since demonstrated resilience, and I will persevere through this challenging period. I will navigate it one day at a time, moment by moment, if necessary. Time inevitably marches on, regardless of how slowly it seems to progress. I am grateful to all who have taken the time to read my update and catch up on what has transpired. To conclude, I extend my sincerest gratitude to those who have offered their support and encouragement throughout this journey. I would like to express my sincerest gratitude to those of you who took the time to comment, message, and encourage me throughout this significant life event. I can confidently assert that the strength of this community was instrumental in saving me, encouraging me, and giving me the opportunity to live a happy life after avoiding a dismal existence. I would also like to take this opportunity to reflect on the past 3 years since D-Day and more than a year since my last post. This period has been the first in which I have been able to focus on my own needs. I do not have an update on my ex-wife or her situation, as I have gone completely no contact with her and her entire family on all forms of communication. I have even had to mute and block mutual friends of ours, as I was concerned that unwanted information might be able to slip through. From my past experiences, I knew that keeping anything that had to do with her or her family off my feed would give me the best chance of success. This period has afforded me the opportunity to focus on my life moving forward, rather than allowing my mind to become preoccupied with the past. Indeed, maintaining no contact with her family has been a significant challenge, given that they were my family up until the point at which she made her decision. I have loved some of them as I would blood relatives, and coming to terms with the loss of these relationships has been difficult and unfair. However, I recognize that this strategy is beneficial for me. As time goes on, there are more days where I am not consumed by thoughts of her. I no longer consider her a significant factor in my life. When I do think about her, it is not with sorrow or pain, but rather with gratitude that I have avoided a potentially problematic situation. During the past year, I made a significant career change and started my own independent consulting business, providing services in technology support, system design, and other areas. I was able to secure several contracts relatively quickly, including 2 with government organizations in my county. The work has been challenging, but both contracts have been renewed for another 12 months, indicating a continued demand for my services. The opportunity to work for myself and have the freedom to make such a decision with no one dependent on my success except for myself has been invigorating. I take great pride in the work I am able to deliver to my clients, and having the feeling of self-worth has made a significant impact on my sense of well-being. I am able to view the past without concern and without worry about the present or future. My work life is solid, my finances are far better than they have ever been, my mind is mostly free from the memories that previously haunted me, my body is in better shape than it has been since this whole situation began, and I am feeling good about myself as a man. The one area I am somewhat concerned with is my general lack of trust in people, especially women. From a romantic perspective, my lack of trust in people made leaving my job straightforward and starting my own business an obvious decision. I am not reliant on anyone else to complete tasks, and tasks are consistently completed. However, from a romantic standpoint, the desire to be in a relationship has significantly diminished. I am comfortable with being single, and during my brief experience with online dating, I realized that the majority of individuals on these platforms are emotionally unstable. After 3 to 4 dates, it became evident that the women in question were not genuinely seeking a meaningful connection, as their profiles suggested. Instead, they appeared to be seeking undivided attention from men they were meeting with. It is noteworthy that none of the dates I went on about a year ago were exclusive, which made me feel like I am not condoning their playing the field. I have had enough of that for one lifetime. I do not intend to sound disrespectful of any woman or to suggest that I have taken a pill or that I am going my own way. There is a significant part of me that yearns for that connection and intimacy, and I desire to share my life with someone. However, just because I feel that way does not mean that I am going to let just anyone into my life for the sake of not being alone. I am not seeking to fill my life with relationships for the sake of not being alone. I am willing to be patient and to do the work necessary to continue putting my life on its best course. I am open to the possibility of love again someday. I have this annoying self-dialogue that pops into my head more than I'd like to admit, which keeps reminding me that I am 34 years old and that I should have had a wife and children by now. I have not yet married and had children, and I am not yet living a happy life. Many of my friends have mortgages and are going on trips, doting over their children, and living their best lives. I have money in the bank, but this does not make me feel better about my life. I need to continue working on this issue, but I know that holding myself to some theoretical timeline in my head is not what I need in reality. For now, I am grateful to have the life that I do. I am leading a life that I am grateful to have, despite the circumstances. I am fortunate to have been able to move on from my previous relationship and to have the opportunity to build a new life for myself. I am hopeful that I will be able to look back on my life and be proud of who I am and of the choices I have made. I am grateful for your time, advice, support, and words of wisdom. Without your guidance, I would not have been able to navigate this situation. It is evident that the young woman in question suffered from untreated manic depression or BPD. It is important to recognize that rational choices about life are not typically made without emotional influence. However, it is crucial to note that having a challenging condition does not excuse hurtful behavior. Many individuals face similar struggles, but do not engage in cheating. You made the right choice. It is preferable to exit a chaotic relationship before it has a negative impact on you, in order to maintain your independence rather than forming a family with an incompatible partner. Furthermore, given your current trajectory, you will likely become an appealing candidate for a healthy relationship once you are prepared for it again. I wish you the best of luck and hope you remain strong. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed my videos, please do not forget to like, share, and subscribe. Have a good day.